We are in the waning days of 2020, and we've just entered the season of Advent, a season of hope and light and preparing for Christmas. We've been waiting all year. We've been waiting for vaccines and waiting for sports and waiting for election results and waiting for kids to be able to go to school and waiting to be able to go to concerts and movies and restaurants and waiting for test results and waiting through illnesses and waiting through quarantines. And now we start Advent as if we haven't been waiting, and we get this crazy story from the book of Mark about suffering and the end of the world. It's not what we expect to hear this time of year. It's not what we want to hear this time of year. Now what? What could possibly happen now? That's what I've decided our Advent 2020 theme will be. Now what? Do we need any more reminders of how bad things can get? The Spirit Garage book discussion happening right now is a book called Everything is Spiritual by Bob Bell, who talks about a time when that question was on his mind, when his own life had fallen apart. Now what, he would ask, wondering what comes next in his life and how to rise from the ashes. And he realized those words became a prayer. So in that book discussion, we started wondering about that as an Advent theme. We might say those words differently today in 2020. Now what? As I said before, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We live in a city where a Black man got shot by a cop, nothing new, but created unrest around the world. This time has meant economic collapse for some, and other people are doing really well, which means the gap between the wealthy and the poor is widening even further, and the truth is nearly impossible to discern from our public leaders. Yet Jesus wants us to keep awake. What are we to keep awake for? Now what is going to happen? Don't give us anything else to deal with in this crazy year of 2020. And keep awake. We've already been kept awake with anxieties about all that is going on around us, or awake with the sound of helicopters over our neighborhoods, or sleeping but with those super weird COVID dreams. Or awake worrying about sick relatives, or awake worrying about how to stretch the unemployment check, or how to keep the business open and the people employed. Now you want us to stay awake? What about going to sleep so that we can have visions of sugar plums dancing in our heads? What about settling in for that long winter's nap? Well, it turns out that Christ wasn't born like a cute little baby dressed up with a bow on the head underneath a big Christmas tree in a home with a lofted ceiling so that you could get the really big tree. Christ was born in a manger after a hard journey mandated by the government. And from the time he was born, his life was in danger. That is Advent. So this is a year where it might actually be easier to understand what Advent is all about, when everything is falling apart, when people and institutions are failing, when there are power grabs and a lack of trust in leaders. I'm talking about Herod, of course. These were all true of the Adventing times before Christ was born. So when we listen to this text about keeping watch as all the things happen, the sun darkens and the stars fall, 4 times the disciples are asked to keep awake and alert and keep watch. Maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe it is always so easy for us to be lulled back asleep instead of staying woke. This is an apocalyptic text. And sometimes those texts for many of us can be confusing, and we like to ignore them because for me, that's what another kind of Christian talks about. The one who stands down on the street corner on some sort of platform talking about the end of the world. But the word apocalypse actually means something different, sort of, something far more prevalent, something totally 2020. It means the unveiling or the revealing. So what is it that is being revealed to us in this time? Some things have been revealed to many of us this year. What white supremacy looks like and how it affects all of our lives, what criminal justice is and is not, and first off, it's not justice, who is safe and who deserves protection, how close we all are to losing everything, but some people closer than others, how much we need people, and how bad we are at being in community in some circumstances, like when everybody hoarded all the toilet paper and hand sanitizer and can't seem to follow the rules to try to keep the virus from spreading, but also how good we can be to each other, how we can come together for a time when neighbors were keeping watch over their neighborhoods when there were no emergency services available in Minneapolis and St. Paul, when people were out in the streets with each other, chanting with one voice, when church people got milk for tear-gassed eyes and boards for businesses and food and water for hungry and thirsty people. A lot was being revealed to us about who we are, the good and the bad. And the revealing probably isn't over because we haven't done much to fix lots of what is broken. Jesus calls his disciples to pay attention, to watch for deception, to watch out for yourselves and for each other, to watch during the difficult days ahead. In the face of environmental, political, social, and cosmic calamity, stay woke. We can go back to sleep and pretend life is mostly fine. We almost always do until the next person gets shot, until the next superstorm that reminds us that this planet's heat, as the planet heats up hotter and hotter and our plants migrate north, our planet is being devastated. As rhetoric continues to divide us, I read a novel a couple months ago by Louise Erdrich called The Future Home of the Living God, and I was struck by this line in that novel. This is how the world ends, I think. Everything crazy, yet people doing normal things. Or we can stay woke and keep learning, thinking about who is at risk when God's people slip into slumber. How can we continue to learn and be present and watch out for people and stay alert and name the realities we see? Participate in God's work as we wait for God, who is always coming into the world, sometimes through our actions. We don't know what is to come. We don't know the now what that we're going to see, but be ready. When nations rage, the earth moves, tyrants are toppled. When life and death smack us in the face, the world is always ending for someone somewhere, and it's not always a bad thing. For new life is coming. Our gospel from John also tells us this. So also, when you see these things take place, you know that he is near at the very gates. During this season, we don't know what is to come, but we do know who is to come. We are reminded that God, the infinite, ultimate, came and was made known to us quietly out back in a stable. And God is always being birthed somewhere, sometime. Keep watch, stay woke. Amen.